It follows tonight's edition of Panorama on BBC One, which contained allegations of improper use of council funds. Now, the Health Minister David Mellor visits Bristol tomorrow for the last leg of a national tour to promote self-governing hospitals. Under the government's plans, hospitals that opt out of control by district health authorities will be able to run themselves like businesses and sell their services to districts and GPs. The aim is that efficient hospitals get the greatest rewards and put their profits into providing better services for more patients. Exactly how the idea will work in practice hasn't yet been defined. But in theory, these self-governing hospitals will have greater choice over what services they offer, will be able to decide prices for their services, set pay and conditions for their staff, and sell assets and borrow money. But do hospitals want these new freedoms? Well, Newsnight's been to Bristol, where the local health authorities nominated 6 of the city's hospital units for self-government. If the plan goes ahead, Bristol's Royal Infirmary, the Eye Hospital and Bristol General, amongst others, would come together to form a single self-governing unit in the city. But as Sarah Spiller reports, the idea has caused serious concern among the hospital's staff, and David Mellor is likely to face a stormy reception when he arrives tomorrow.
For staff at Bristol's Accident and Emergency Department, these are uncertain times.
Okay, Bernard. Oh, my darling.
The new plans to change the way healthcare is organised have provoked a fierce debate here and throughout the city's hospitals, with staff divided over opting out and some anxious that the government has not made a proper diagnosis of health service problems and has come up with the wrong treatment.
Our worry is that this treatment may have serious side effects and in fact may even be lethal to the National Health Service as we know it.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the NHS ain't broke. It just needs a little tune-up.
While having a lot of sympathy with the views of the staff, there are some at least who are trying to preserve a health service that doesn't exist at the moment.
But staff's concerns have been heightened by what they maintain is a lack of information on self-governance and its impact on patient care.
Hi, Mrs. Tolley. I introduced Dr. Thomas to you.
As chairman of the medical committee, Trevor Thomas is organising a ballot among doctors to gauge the level of support for the move. Like other consultants here, he believes the government have pressed ahead too quickly, substituting hype for hard facts.
You don't have to brainwash us if you've got something that's really worth having. It's got to have good quality information that's proved itself. I think that's one of the things that we really do want to try and persuade the government to do, to try and prove their good idea. Why the rush? There isn't any rush. There cannot be any rush. You have to get it right if you're dealing with healthcare.
Agenda item 4 then, the government's white paper, the future of self-governing hospitals.
At a health authority meeting, opting out is discussed only tentatively. Management emphasised they have only as yet expressed an interest in the idea. But the 2 key players in this district are behind the plan: the General Manager, John Roylance, and the Chairman, Peter Dury. A former manager of a brewery, he's keen to see medical staff in charge of budgets.
The person who actually cares, that is, the person who makes you and I better, is not a layman like myself, the health authority. We don't do that at all. The person who makes you and I better are the doctors and the nurses and the physiotherapists and all of those experts. I think it helps them to have their control close to where they're actually working, and they're satisfied the people making the decisions do really understand what that particular hospital needs.
In a district with an annual budget of £120 million a year, balancing the books is no mean task. And some fear that if the medical staff have to monitor money, it could distract from the job of caring for patients.
You're doing very well, Mr. Stroker. Just a few more images to do.
Others are more enthusiastic. Careful housekeeping in this X-ray department has already meant extra benefits for the patients. And a consultant here talks of the freedom of self-governance, of being released from health authority ties.
As in my department, I would like to see the whole hospital liberated, if you will, a freedom from constraint, the ability to develop its capital resources, to develop other resources that it sees fit, to communicate with the local population. I mean, who ever heard of the Bristol and Western Health District brackets teaching as we became some time ago? I don't think you can identify with that. And I would like to see people have the ability to identify with this hospital, and for this hospital to identify in an even more efficient fashion with its local community.
But opinions divided over what these changes might mean for the local community, the new health service consumers. The government believes that by freeing hospitals to compete, they'll increase consumer choice. GPs and district health authorities will supposedly be able to shop around for healthcare on patients' behalf, selecting hospitals which give the best results at the best price. The fear, though, is that when services are put up for sale, hospitals will be out for profits, not patients. At Bristol's Eye Hospital, the manager is confident extra profits could work in patients' favour. People come here from outside the district for the latest high-tech surgery, and it's one of the 6 units that would form part of any opt-out bid. Under self-governance, they'd get reimbursed for patients, and the extra money could be used to perform cataract, squint and corneal graft operations.
If we are successful and good, we will attract more patients than we do at the moment. And that in turn, that's like the business part of it. That will mean that we're doing a greater volume of work. We're attracting more money at the margin. That gives us that extra money to do more of other things.
Elsewhere, though, there's considerable concern about how competition might work in practice. Nursing very young children at this special baby unit can be expensive, and this consultant paediatrician is among a handful who've written to MPs expressing fears about what might happen in a self-governing hospital.
With self-governing status, the emphasis will be on high-profile services that are profitable being provided, but services that are not so profitable, such as care of chronically ill children, and particularly children with mental or physical handicap, who will need a lot of work in terms of planning. Those will be given very low priority.
We might be able to speed up your cardiology appointment too.
Some staff believe the accident and emergency department could be low priority too. If the Bristol complex opts out, this department may be part of the essential services, the so-called core services, a health authority would expect a hospital to provide. But staff point out that accident and emergency is not an obvious money spinner, and fear it may not survive in a tough new world of market forces.
We're worried that the accident and emergency services, which have always been a bit of a Cinderella service, may not be as well funded as we think they should be. We're concerned that because you can't look at what happens in A&E in terms of throughput and outcome, that the money isn't going to be forthcoming to run the service. It's something that people need locally, and we think that it's the most important thing.
I think there's a misapprehension there, because the people who determine what services are provided is not the hospital, it's the district who have this money, and with that money have got to see it's properly shared and spread to cover all the aspects of healthcare they need to cover in their geographic area. The maternity, the elderly, the acute, the accident emergency, all of these got to be covered.
Whatever the assurances, worry about opting out here goes right across the board, from nurses to doctors and consultants. And perhaps the most vociferous opposition comes from the junior doctors. Despite the government's pledge to protect teaching and research, many fear a self-governing hospital may not offer them the breadth of experience they'd like for a comprehensive training.
As far as teaching is concerned, I don't see that there is any guarantee at all in that setting that a hospital is going to be committed to teaching medical students.
The quality of teaching that doctors and undergraduates receive reflects the quality of doctor you're going to get and the quality of care your patient's going to have in the end. And I think that's what's important. It's the patients who must get the best from the system.
Well, all I can say is that I've been at 2 briefings where the Secretary of State himself and the Management Board have identified teaching and have reserved powers to ensure that teaching is maintained. Now, you wouldn't expect me to say that they were deliberately misleading me.
Well, welcome everybody to the latest meeting in our Save the NHS
Junior doctors helped set up this local pressure group, which aims to campaign against the proposals. In the government's eyes, these are the alarmists, afraid of change, attacking new ideas. The campaigners retort that it's the government who are dodging the real issue, underfunding.
This NHS review arose out of chronic underfunding of the health service, and that problem has not yet been tackled, and there will be no extra money put into the health service from the public funds in the long term. But the argument's been put onto a completely different basis, and that healthcare has been put onto a market basis. Now, market forces are all about survival of the fittest, and the healthcare system is all about caring for the unfit, and market forces are totally inappropriate for healthcare.
We're going to take Judy off into
a cubicle.
At a press day in the breast screening unit, a TV crew publicises this new facility for women. And as the camera focuses on the plush decor and banks of equipment, there's no visible sign of a money shortage here. But one consultant has told us he's worried there may not be enough operating space to treat all the problems discovered when the breast screening programme gets underway. So the dilemma here mirrors that in the health service as a whole. How to make choices, how to live within your means.
If we provide healthcare that's not cost effective, then somebody's not getting healthcare they otherwise would receive. I have to remind everybody that the health service has always been a cash limited service. Certainly in principle, if not in the technical sense, from its outset. So the problems facing the health service is how to provide best health care from a fixed sum of money.
Juggling that fixed sum of money to meet the ever-growing demands on the health service is what the self-governing proposals are all about. But to make the system work, managers must overcome the fears of some staff. The fears that opting out means making more ruthless choices about healthcare, and that along the way, some patients may simply get left behind.
Report by Sarah Spiller. And now back to that story we mentioned at the top of the programme. The United Airlines DC-10, with nearly 300 people on board, has crashed in the United States. The plane was on a flight from Denver to Chicago when it crashed into a field just short of the runway at Sioux City Airport in Iowa. Eyewitnesses have reported a ball of fire as the plane broke up on impact. A spokesman for the Federal Aviation Authority said the pilot of the DC-10 reported a total hydraulic failure. Both the engine and brakes failed. I'm joined now by our Washington correspondent, Martin Bell. Martin, what hope of survivors?
On the surface, there would seem to be very little, but we are getting reports that some people were actually seen walking away from this crash, which was incredible in view of the other reports that the plane disintegrated on impact. It seems that one wing tip hit the ground and it cartwheeled and somersaulted down the runway. It actually crashed on the end of the runway and it burst into flames as it did so. So the chances of there being many survivors would seem at first sight fairly slight.
Have you any idea what total hydraulic failure means, Martin?
The experts are already speculating about it, but that this was what it is. It is what it means is that the pilots, in fact, lose control. They lose control of their altitude and their direction. It is the guiding mechanisms that go.
Martin, thank you very much indeed. Well, now the business news. The price of a pint of beer is rising by up to 8 pence. The increase comes shortly after the Trade Secretary, Lord Young, abandoned a Monopolies Commission plan to reduce the number of pubs owned by the large brewers. Labour say the brewers are now making consumers pay for their campaign against the plan. This report from Jamie Robertson.
9 days ago, Lord Young was criticised for apparently bowing to pressure from the big brewers. Proposals to end their monopoly, forcing them to sell off some 22,000 pubs, were scrapped. But the brewers say the latest price rise today has nothing to do with that success and everything to do with major investments.
Building costs have recently been rising way ahead of the rate of inflation, and we've got to accommodate that in not only maintaining and repairing our properties, but actually at the same time developing them and providing the sort of amenities that tomorrow's customers are going to want.
Well, it's particularly ironic coming just after Lord Young's decision not to implement the Monopolies and Mergers Commission findings, of course. And although this one is within the rate of inflation, it follows a period in which beer prices in pubs have been going up much faster than inflation, so it's not quite as good as it looks.
But the brewers still face an uncertain future. At the end of the year, the European Commission gives its verdict on the industry. That review may well have more far-reaching effects than anything Britain's Monopolies Commission proposed.
Two of the major oil companies, Shell and BP, are reducing the price of petrol. It'll mean a gallon of 4-star leaded petrol will come down by 3 pence to around £1.87. A similar reduction in unleaded petrol, bringing it to £1.76. The cut's been made possible by a better exchange rate. Other companies are expected to follow. The European Commission has ruled that Rolls-Royce can continue to restrict foreign ownership of its shares, even though it's against EC rules. The Commission said it was making a special concession because of national security concerns. But the limit for foreign holdings is being raised from 15 to 29.5%. Takeover speculation helped push the 100-share index to another high. It closed at 2292, up over 19 points. In New York, the Dow Jones was boosted by the lowest rise in inflation for 16 months. It closed at 2584, up nearly 40 points. The pound fell against the dollar. It closed at $1.6095, down 1.5 cents. And now a quick look at the headlines of tomorrow morning's papers. The Financial Times has the story we started with, law reforms forced through in spite of critics, a picture of Lord Mackay there, defeat for the bar on rights of audience. Ridley fails to persuade poll tax doubters, the row in the House of Commons. The Times, Daily Telegraph too, poll tax levels upset Ridley's Tory critics, Lord Mackay in the middle there. Ridley fails to ease poll tax fears, The Guardian. Ridley has to go now, says the Daily Mail, bluntly. The Sun has the tragic story about the little girl who was murdered, and today as well, face to face with the killer. That's all from Newsnight tonight. Back tomorrow at 10:30, but at the moment from all of us on the programme, a very good night. But I've just heard that we have heard from Sioux City that there are up to 25 or maybe up to 30 survivors of that air crash early this evening. Good night.
As we approach the anniversary of man's first step onto the surface of the moon, For All Mankind tomorrow night on BBC One presents a single journey put together